All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast, your mostly weekly look at the into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. If I edited this thing at all, I would cut that out. I don't. I'm your host, Robert Winfrey. Thank you all very much for being here. Please, let me get this out of the way at the top so I can remember. Like, comment, subscribe, share, rate, review, any of it. However you are listening to this podcast, I don't care how, a little bit, that will give us all, helps the algorithm, helps us boost visibility, lets us know that people are listening. And Lord knows sometimes it helps to know that. On the agenda this evening, yesterday, the UFC was on ABC. First time the UFC had been on traditional broadcast television since, I think, Poirier Gaethje was the last Fox event.
And the first time combat sports had been on ABC since the year 2000.
Yeah, it was a nice little thing for ABC. ABC, of course, part of the Disney family of companies, and since the UFC is on ESPN, which is also a Disney member, there's some stuff in the contract about letting them appear on ABC on occasion if necessary. So, well, I don't think we have the ratings yet for that, but hopefully in the coming weeks we'll get some numbers on that. Anyway, we also have a Wednesday event, which I get to watch instead of another miserable, disingenuous, pandering inauguration of a president here in the United States. That will be, again, Wednesday early in the morning. UFC on ESPN 20, headlined by Michael Chiesa and Neil Magny. And then this Saturday, the big one, the return of, depending on how you feel about Khabib's status in the sport, the biggest star in the sport, Conor McGregor, as he and Dustin Poirier will battle in a rematch. Those two fought several years ago. Conor won via first-round TKO. And that card finally, a couple of weeks ago, got some value beyond the main event when they added Dan Hooker and Michael Chandler as your co-main, which is another great fight. So we'll have a preview of that, a little bit of the news, all that stuff. You guys know the format by now. If you don't, this is the format. So thank you very much for being a new fan. You heard him already a little bit. He is back for the first time in quite a while. First time in 2021. Your friend and mine, 411 Mania's Jack of all trades, Jeffrey Harris. Jeff, how you doing out there? Your state still on fire?
2021, same as 2020. I don't know why people were blaming it on a calendar. It's not the calendar's fault.
That is true. Calendar is an arbitrary distinction we draw about the
and
Earth's
yes,
position.
It still sucks over here. But it could be worse. Could always be worse.
You could always be living in New York. That's true.
I'm not happy right now about a lot of things, but I'm doing relatively okay. My parents are doing okay, so could be worse.
You know, those are really the most important things. I mean, no gimmicks, no jokes, no sarcasm. 100%. Yeah. Those are the most important things. So if you got those going for you,
I try to keep perspective on this as sort of unhappy as I am right now. And just sort of, I guess, disenfranchised by all the things we've lost over the last year.
Disillusion.
I just try to keep in perspective that it could always be worse. For sure.
It always can. Never forget that, everybody. Exactly. I mean, always it can get worse.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of what keeps me going right now. And I'm on here with you, and we're talking about fights again, so that's not so bad.
Finding the positive is a good thing. All right, let's get into last night's event. Again, the UFC was on ABC, had a slightly earlier start time.
Which I like, by the way.
Yeah, the earlier start time, not a bad thing. I'm a little bit annoyed. The one on Wednesday starts very early, which I am slightly annoyed by, right. But what are you going to do? I am beholden to the broadcast schedule, much like anyone else's.
You had a few weeks off at least.
That was nice. Any longer and I would have started going stir crazy, but a couple of weeks over the holidays, yeah, I was fine with it.
And they had fans back in the arena for the first time since, I guess, was it the Adesanya?
The Adesanya Romero card.
Yeah.
Because that was the one that happened before the Brasilia card when they had no fans, and then
they had no fans. Yeah, they had that one with no fans. and then they had to shut down until, I guess, May. So this was the first one with fans since March 2020. So
Closer to a year than not.
under a year. Yep.
Yeah, it was. I'm a little bit torn because my stance on audience participation in combat sports has always been that a good crowd will make a great fight better, but nothing makes a fight and a broadcast less observable than a drunken crowd that won't stop wooing.
Right. This crowd wasn't so bad.
Helps that they're in kind of a dry part of the world, and I mean that in the alcoholic sense, not the
exactly.
not the climate.
So at the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi, they were allowed to have about a limited amount of fans in the arena, about 2,000, 20,000 seat arena. So,
and like you said, kudos to those fans.
Works. MMA, and MMA does not. MMA is not as bad without the fans as pro wrestling, which loses a lot.
Pro wrestling, because pro wrestling is a performative art that requires audience participation to work. It really struggles. MMA, there's drama because two people are fighting. You don't need a whole lot more than that. I can't
watch American pro wrestling these days without the fans, but like New Japan, I don't know if you ever look at New Japan Pro Wrestling, but when they returned from hiatus, they were able to have restricted amount of fans at the arenas. And it's so much better, even with the limitations. And that's the main wrestling I've been watching, through this whole pandemic. But MMA, I think, works just as well without the fans present. You don't lose a lot, I think, without having the fans around. Yeah, and you can hear a lot more of what's going on in the fights, actually. But yeah, go ahead.
The upper bound limit might come down a little bit, but again, there's nothing worse than a bad crowd.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
The bottom comes up.
Yeah, like yeah, I agree.
Anyway, last night, main event. I don't even really know. I almost struggle to know where to start with this fight. Max Holloway defeats Calvin Kattar via unanimous decision. Scores of 50-43, 50-43, and 50-42. The 50-43s include two
fight of the night. I guess Calvin Kattar was basically given a $50,000 bonus for all the brain damage he suffered last night.
That won't even cover his first 5 neurologist appointments.
Here you go, Calvin Kattar. Here's $50,000 for getting your brains bashed in for 25 minutes. Sorry, your corner sucks so bad.
There should have been, I don't want to get off onto too much of a tangent here, but seriously, Dana wants to come out and say that brain damage is part of the gig when you fight. To be fair, it is. The compensation should reflect that, and what fighters are paid is not adequate to the physical risks and price they wind up paying. That's just indisputable fact.
I mean, Max Holloway looked great, but that fight should not have been 5 rounds.
It should not have gone into that fight should have been stopped at points in the 4th, or Kattar's corner should have stopped it between rounds 4 and 5.
Where was BJ Penn's corner? BJ Penn's corner. And this was 11 years ago at UFC 94, and the second fight with GSP was getting beat down. After 4 rounds, they stopped. His corner called for a stoppage and stopped the fight. His corner did.
Yeah, for taking a small fraction.
A fraction, exactly. That his beating in that fight was nowhere near as bad as what happened to Kattar. Here, the fact that 2 judges gave this fight 50-43 is generous, Robert. Generous.
Yeah, I was doing this live. I was 50-43. I probably should have gone at 10-7 in the 4th, so that would have been 50-42.
I said this on social media. I believe there's just this warped mentality in MMA. That, you're not a real fighter if you're not basically ready to literally die over the course of like a 5-round fight, and you're not a real fighter or you're a pussy if you throw in the towel and call for an early stoppage. There is no shame in throwing in the towel to protect your fighter. And I think corners have that mentality too. They want you got to be a warrior. You got to be a warrior and go out there and basically die. Basically everything short of dying. And you replied to me last night, Robert, and you said, it's going to have to take someone dying to get some, I don't know, some regulation on this or changes on this. I pray that never happens. I pray that never happens, but I'm of the same worry right now.
Well, talking about this for just a second before we get into some of the fight. The issue isn't so much regulation. There are regulations in place. The issue is purely, how do I say this? There's a bit of a thought that if we can just write the rules with enough specificity, that will fix the problem. That's not the case. But people who adhere to that mindset always will look at rules and go, well, this should be more specific. And then but the more refined you try to make those, it just winds up creating more headaches. I think this is borne out constantly every time theory is applied to practice. The problem, as it relates to MMA in particular in this case, is purely one of culture and mentality. Boxing coaches have no problem throwing in the towel,
right?
Because boxing, not only has boxing been around long enough people have been around in boxing long enough to have seen other people killed in the ring. That is a brutal fact.
Has happened. It has happened.
That's brutal. It's uncomfortable. Nobody likes it. It is a risk inherent to the sport, and MMA has just never had to have that kind of cultural epiphany around saving your fighter from life-altering / life-ending damage when it serves no purpose.
But I don't know what, if I know this sport, we've seen some crazy come from behind victories. We've seen some crazy comebacks. But Qatar was not in a state to make that happen. He had the opportunity. He had enough opportunity, and by round 4, to me, enough was enough. His corner. I don't know who his coaches are, but they didn't do a good job coaching him or just protecting your athlete. What is?
Yeah.
Now maybe I don't know what kind of I'm not a doctor. I don't know what kind of long-term damage this is going to do, but I feel like it's not going to be good. And second of all, where was Herb? Not to drag on Herb Dean, but where was Herb Dean in all of this? Seriously.
Yeah, part of he got close to stop. You could see him get kind of close a couple of times in the 4th, and unfortunately he was deterred by Kattar's display of, I'm still cognitively here, and I'm still attempting to fight and win. And I can appreciate that can be.
Do you think he was in it in round 5 in the fight?
Well, hang on. I can appreciate that is a consideration.
Okay.
Using that to overshadow some of the other considerations going on there in the 4th round, I think, is a mistake. Kattar was absorbing.
What was Kattar's what was even his offense? Did he even have any?
In the 4th? Let me bring up the stats. Let me bring up UFC stats. I think they have them finalized.
Because what I saw, it just didn't look like he was doing anything of note.
Holloway versus Kattar. You can look up this fight in particular. If we go per round, in the 4th, Calvin Kattar landed 34 significant strikes of 71 attempted.
Okay.
Sorry, is that significant or total? Sorry, that's significant. Now, that's
some
not
of that.
But
some of those numbers are misleading now.
Well, okay. Again, one of them, it's a little bit misleading. You have to. Now, that's not a bad stat in a vacuum, But you have to counterbalance that against Max Holloway landing 141 of 191 attempted.
In round 4, and that's in round 4.
That's just round 4. When you are on that end of that statistically different a beating, clearly something has gone wrong, and you should probably call it a day. You also have to counter that with a bit of knowledge about the personalities involved. Max Holloway has fought 9 UFC fights, something like that. And the man has never been dropped. Think about that for just a second. And he holds the UFC record for that. He set all kinds of records with this performance last night. But he's never been dropped. That includes fights against Conor McGregor at featherweight and the fight with Dustin Poirier up at lightweight.
24 UFC fights.
24. Okay. Either way.
I did the math.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the correction. But if those guys aren't dropping him, not to say they didn't hurt him, Poirier did several times. I mean, Kattar hurt Holloway a couple of times in this fight. He had a good right at one point. Holloway ducked into an uppercut in, I think, the third. It's not like Kattar had no moments of offense. But if you've not seen anything to indicate that there's going to be a meaningful opportunity to win, and you guys taking a medically inadvisable amount of damage, and I mean medically inadvisable not just like relative to you or me, I mean medically inadvisable relative to the fight game, the fight should have been stopped.
The last time Holloway was in a fight scheduled for just 3 rounds, I think was in 2016 against Lamas.
Yeah. Lamas came after the Swanson fight, but those were the last 2. Yeah, this fight probably should have been stopped either in the 4th or between the 4th and the 5th.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Spectacular performance like Max Holloway. He really needed it, especially, I think he lost both those fights to Volkanovski. I don't know if you agree on that.
I do.
He really needed a performance like this. And honestly, I'm still iffy about a possible 3rd fight with Volkanovski because, here's my problem with a potential 3rd fight. I just kind of don't see it going much differently unless Holloway completely changes his approach and game plan for the fight, because the 2nd fight went pretty much the same way as the 1st one. There wasn't much variation. It's kind of like a close, kind of very even fight where I kind of gave the edge to Volkanovski. I think he edged it out, and I just think that's kind of the way those 2 match up. So I'm not really too eager to see that fight happen a 3rd time, but I mean, I know Volkanovski's fighting someone else now, but I just think it's just an odd stylistic matchup, and I think it's going to go that way. I don't know, 9 times out of 10 or however. They've already fought 2 out of 2 times, and it went pretty much the same way both times.
Yeah, the differences between the 1st and 2nd fight it's not that they don't have big impact, it's that they're fairly subtle distinctions that wind up having a big impact the longer the fight goes.
Now, is Holloway one of the greatest featherweights of all time? Undoubtedly, for sure. I think he was a better, even though his championship reign was not as long as Aldo, I think he was a much better featherweight champion than Jose Aldo. Exponentially.
Holloway is probably also the best fighter to come out of Hawaii. And I know
I would agree.
And I know BJ Penn has some accomplishments that are really tough to duplicate and should absolutely be respected. Both winning titles in 2 different weight classes and being the first American to win the Jiu-Jitsu World Championships.
Look at the gauntlet Holloway went through just to become champion. Just like not even 30 years old.
He's still not even 30.
Still not even 30 years old. Just a guy in his 20s. Beat Andre Fili, Clay Collard, Akira Corsani, Cole Miller. Okay, submitted Cub Swanson. Finished Charles Oliveira. Beat Jeremy Stevens, Ricardo Lamas. Some of these guys are title contenders or top-ranked competition. Or Anthony Pettis, a former UFC champion, finished him. Finished Jose Aldo 2 times in a row. The fight with Pettis was an interim title fight. Had to finish Jose Aldo to become champion, then finished him again in the rematch, and then beat an undefeated Brian Ortega. BJ Penn never had a gauntlet like that, ever, in his career.
No, not consecutively, no.
And especially not one where he was that consistent.
Also very true. Holloway is now the sole owner of so many statistics.
Also beat Frankie Edgar when Frankie was still really at the top of his game.
I wouldn't say top, but he was not a schlub.
Undeniably, still one of the top featherweights in the division when they fought.
He was still up there, yeah.
And another former UFC champion. A guy that BJ Penn was never able to beat. While I think Penn won the first fight, in the record books he never beat. So yes, I think he is. I think you can easily say he's the best fighter to ever come out of Hawaii. Yes, I think it's safe to say at this point. I mean, look at his record: 22-6.
His record is all of those losses coming in the UFC. By the way, he debuted in the UFC at 4-0. Max Holloway
never been knocked down yet.
The man threw 740, I think the final count here is 744 significant strike attempts. If you go total strikes, it's 747. Do you know how hard that is to do? That's I think somebody did the math on this. I think it was Shane Al-Shadi. That's like throwing a significant strike every 2 seconds for 25 minutes. That is unbelievably physically taxing.
And I don't know if we should believe this or not. Apparently he did no sparring training for this fight. Do you believe that?
I don't have a problem believing he didn't do any hard sparring.
Okay.
Now, if you want to raise a question about the overall practice as far as that goes, my thought tends to be the younger and earlier you are in your career, you shouldn't jump into hard sparring right away. Right. But you need it to train. You need it to get used to that sensation. Right. Because if all you have for live rounds is the fighting, you're going to wind up in some pretty serious deficits. By the time you get to where Max is now, give or take, he probably does, if he does hard, he probably doesn't do hard sparring so much as hard drilling. And then any sparring he does is a bit lighter. It's kind of to loosen up, to work combinations.
But I also think Max is I think he's a very unique special fighter too, though.
Yeah. Training always has to be tailored to the individual fighter. Should fighters, again, once you kind of, especially if you're Max, if you're that level, if you've been doing this for, 30 fights, however many years, hard sparring has diminishing returns at that point for a lot of reasons.
He also said last night in the press conference, protect your head. He said, young fighters, protect your head and stop killing yourself in training.
That is absolutely good advice.
Don't take all that damage to the head during training.
Yeah, that's absolutely good advice. Yeah, your brain doesn't heal the way other things do. But Max is now the sole owner. He was already, I think he surpassed. No, this was it. Last night he surpassed GSP for total significant strikes either landed or thrown in the UFC, and he extended his total in the other category. He was already number one. He put another, 100 to 200 significant strikes over Joanna, who was number two. He fought like a man possessed last night. This was not the most competitive fight, as the scores will reflect. But the totality of his performance is one of the most impressive things I've seen in the UFC. I'm not saying the top, But if you tell me in no specific order, give me, your 10 most impressive performances someone has turned in the octagon, that is up there. That is
And
in that list.
Cater was not a soft touch, like he was not.
Ooh.
Like he may not be an elite competitor, but he was a tough get here. So it was a very good win.
Yeah, this is a very meaningful win. The UFC has had one other score. There have been a couple of other fights that have had the same total point differential at the end of 5 rounds. That, I forget the exact number.
Mm-hmm.
But there was another fight that had, I think, these exact same scorecards. 50-43, 50-43, 50-42. That was Rich Franklin versus David Loiseau. Way back in the day for the middleweight.
Oh, that's a blast from the past.
Here's the thing about that. You can point to that fight as the moment David Loiseau's career went downhill and never recovered. The damage he suffered substantively altered his career.
Yeah, now, that's again why I'm saying you got to protect your fighter, man. Protect your fighter. Even if it's from himself,
Again, I don't know that Kattar will have the same kind of decline that Loiseau did, but Kattar's 32, and he just absorbed 445 significant strikes officially, 274 of those to the head. He probably had some damaged ribs, I don't know, broken or not, but he was hurting from those body shots at the end. He didn't have to take all that. He really did.
I think this kind of came up too for the Rakic fight with Anthony Smith. And I know Anthony Smith.
Smith and Teixeira.
Oh, he is Teixeira. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
That fight was okay. So after that fight, he had another loss to Rakic. And he did come back and have a decent win over Devin Clark, but they did at least stop that fight in the 5th round, and he lost teeth, right?
He lost teeth. He lost teeth in the 4th. He was handing them to the ref while he was getting punched. He complained about it between rounds 4 and 5 to his corner.
Mm-hmm.
That fight, for the record, also should have been stopped much earlier than it was.
I think he didn't have his. I don't know. Like his outlook on that was not as, I guess, bad as people were making it out to be, which I guess, hindsight being 2020, but I don't know.
Fighters are always going to say that. They're always going to say that. They are, and I don't mean this consider what I'm saying. I mean it to be neutral in terms of judgment. Fighters they are pathologically competitive, and they believe in themselves to the point of delusion.
Delusion is a good way. Yeah, that's a good way to sum it up.
And to be fair, if you're going to fist fight for money, you kind of have to be. I'm not saying.
Yeah, you got to be wired a little differently. Judgment. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, Teddy Atlas, I think, said it the best. I don't think I can improve on what he said about this fight after watching it. He said these guys are just like the explorers of 300 years ago. Men willing to go places no one has gone because they have to know what's there. That's what these guys. And again, that's a little bit poetic, and again, you can
climbing to the top of Everest, and it's pretty. People ask why you climb Everest. It's not you don't climb Everest because it's there. You climb it because you're trying to challenge yourself physically and mentally. You're trying to achieve something great, and you're trying to can I really do it? Can I really climb the highest mountain? Can I go past my limits of what I think I can do? That's why you do it, And mm-hmm. I think fighters have a similar mentality when they step into the cage.
Yeah, you have to be. This is not a joke. You have to be ready to die when you get into that cage, because people die doing this.
Yes, but the corner men should not have that same mentality, and I feel they do, and I think that's the problem here.
I agree with you. That's a problem, and we're not again, the MMA culture is not going to have that come to Jesus moment until something entirely preventable and entirely catastrophic happens.
So I guess based on what you were saying, I can kind of see how Herb Dean allowed it to continue. I just wish, and not to drag on Herb Dean, just sometimes I wish he had a little more awareness of some, when things like this happen.
Yeah, I would have much rather that fight were stopped, but in the fourth. But again, we've kind of been over that. But Max Holloway reminds the world that he's an absolutely amazing fighter. This particular performance, this type of performance was, like you said, necessary to kind of energize the fan base around a potential third fight with Volkanovski. If he'd come out and won a even clearly but kind of ho-hum fight, I don't think the appetite would have been there. He needed something like this. And apparently he's also kind of tossing his hat into the, if Khabib was looking for someone to do something impressive, lottery. Which, don't get
I highly doubt. I highly doubt. I wanted to see that fight the first time it was.
I did too. The more I didn't like the circumstances around it, but the more I thought about how those two match up, the more I kind of went, yeah, hook this into my veins. This will be good.
Any time that fight gets matched up, I'm of course gonna pick Khabib, but yeah, I like that. I like that matchup. I wish we got it the first time. I don't think it happens, but whatever.
Oh, Max also said, "Hey, I'll be here next. I'll be here for the pay-per-view in case anything happens." Like, buddy, you took some pretty heavy shots in that fight. You wouldn't be medically cleared for that in 7 days.
Max is getting better at this though. Like Max knows how to play the game. He's just playing the game, and I respect that. I respect Max a lot because I think he's learned a lot over his career, and he knows how to do this, I think, better than a lot of guys.
That's true. So again, Max will probably be in the title picture, pending the outcome of, we'll get to the fight in particular a little bit later, between Volkanovski and Brian Ortega. But if he does not fight
for an Ortega upset is what he should be doing.
If Ortega wins, that's an easy fight to make as their rematch. Easy.
So you should be praying for that outcome right now.
Or you get Max moving up to lightweight still seems kind of inevitable to me. That weight cut is not getting any easier for him at featherweight, but whether he chooses to do that now or later still remains to be seen.
I think he'd be competitive at lightweight, but I don't think he would beat those tougher guys.
Again, some of that's going to come down to matchup. I agree with you that lightweight is a tougher division for him, to be sure. For sure. But anyway, that was your main event.
He's going to go down as one of the greatest featherweights ever, I think.
Unless he does something, he would have to do something. I hate to say it this way. He would have to do something Benoit-esque to get his name whitewashed. Because even if he goes on a losing streak starting in his next fight, his body of work is just so good.
Yeah, I'm saying even if he were to go on like a serious, like a meteoric decline, he's still solidified a pretty impressive legacy at featherweight, I think.
Yeah, 100%. So Max, title fight or some other really big money weight kind of opportunity next for him. Those are kind of the only options at this point. One of his most impressive performances to watch him do that the way he did it over that duration. Just Max Holloway is the man. He is a monster in that cage. All right, co-main event. Carlos Condit defeated Matt Brown via unanimous decision, 30-27 on all three scorecards. I didn't like 30-27. I thought Brown had the first. Condit had 2 and 3, so the right guy wins in the end, but I take issue with Condit getting the first. Two guys past their prime, but still went out there and had a fun little 3-fight, kind of old school blood and guts fight. So I appreciated it. It was certainly enjoyable. I don't think neither guy is making a legitimate run at this point in their careers for a variety of reasons, but this was a fun little thing to have included on the card. I'm not complaining about it.
I was fine with the fight happening. I'm kind of sad Matt Brown lost. I've always been a big Matt Brown fan. Good for Condit. I thought his career was basically over a couple fights ago, but he's managed to hang in there. He's not the old Carlos Condit anymore, but he was on a 5-fight losing streak. So he was able to snap a 5-fight losing streak, and I was with you. I never really, after the Magny fight, I never really wanted to see him fight again. So supposedly this is the last fight on his UFC contract. I don't know what they want to do with him at this point.
With the roster purges that the UFC has been promising, Condit's not exactly cheap. They might let him go.
He's 36 years old. He's not a hot young prospect anymore.
Yeah, he's 36. He's not cheap. He's good to have on a card in this kind of position, but I don't even think
Robert, he's 2-5 in his last 7. That's not a good record.
No, and again, I don't even think you're really going to main event even fight nights with Carlos Condit at this point. So it's entirely possible they just, don't re-sign him. He, spends the last couple of fights in Bellator. They re-sign him
if they can figure out, okay, we like you a lot, Carlos. You're kind of nearing the end of your run. We want you to end your career here, and we're going to find something for you to do once you're fully retired. This will be your retirement contract, and we'll find something for you to do because we like you so much, and you've done a lot for the sport. You've done a lot of good business for us. You've always been a good soldier for us. We're going to work something out. I can, if that is something Dana White and the UFC brass wanted to do, I would totally be on board with that. But I don't feel like they're much in the business of even doing that anymore,
No, they're really not. So again, I kind of expect to see him pop up in Bellator or PFL, have, another handful of fights and then call it a day. But
why even do that? Because is the money even that great for you to even do that at this point?
That is a calculation that would have to be made between him and the people paying him.
Let me see. He got $315,000 for the Lawler fight. Do you think he would make that much?
It was not enough for that fight.
I mean, I agree, but I don't know. First of all, I don't know what he's making now on his current contract. But this was in 2016. Do you think Bellator would pay him that much per fight? That was his last title. That was his last title fight.
Yeah, again, and we don't know what he's making now, to the best of my knowledge. Bellator might. Bellator is flat out owned by Viacom. They don't mind spending the money on occasion.
But for a declining past his prime 30,
you throw him in there with Douglas.
37-year-old Carlos Condit.
You throw him in there with Douglas Lima. Either you get a feel-good moment for the old warhorse getting a title, or Douglas Lima gets to add a legend to his resume.
Okay. But
or he does the PFL thing, fight for $1 million.
Maybe. But if I'm Dana White, I'm not paying Carlos $1 million to stay.
Oh no, he's. My personal attachment to Condit aside, no, he's not worth him. He's in a purely pragmatic sense. He is not worth $1 million.
He's lucky. He's lucky he didn't get cut after that 5-fight losing streak.
That's absolutely true.
Good fighters. I believe the UFC should have kept, have been cut for much less.
Oh yeah.
That had, I think, way more, maybe not way more potential, okay, certainly at the time they were cut, they had way more potential than Carlos does at this point in his career. Because, I mean, let's face it, 30, he's had 45 fights at this point. And he's almost 37 years old. At this point, he's ancient. His career is it's very near the end. He's nearing the end. The final stretch, if he is going to continue fighting. And, during that whole stretch where he was losing 5 fights, like he was talking about all these side, he was selling medical equipment. He was selling cold brew, he was doing like a cold brew coffee thing. I don't know what's going on with his businesses now. But like he was already, looking at, it seemed he was busy with stuff other than fighting already. So I'm surprised he's lasted this long, quite frankly.
Yeah, I'm with you. He seemed to. It's good to have an eye for what you do when you're done fighting, but by the time a lot of fighters start looking at that realistically, that's kind of an indicator they're near the end. So I don't know what's going to happen with Condit, but if this is his last fight in the UFC, it was a perfectly acceptable Carlos Condit fight. So
more acceptable than what he was doing during that losing streak, which was just horrendous.
Some of that was quite bad. All right. Next, Li Jingliang defeated Santiago Ponzinibbio via knockout 425 of the first. This ended. Ponzinibbio had a 7-fight winning streak, I think, coming into this. He was one of the top contenders.
And hadn't fought since November of 2018.
25-month layoff. Yeah. Certainly a non-trivial layoff. Probably contributed to him losing here. Not the only thing contributing, of course, but that's a long time to be off. And ring rust may not affect every fighter every time, but most fighters most of the time.
And, Li Jingliang,
he's one of the most annoyingly inconsistent. He's
a tough opponent.
I want to try and say this correct. He's certainly a tough opponent. He's got several wins in the UFC, which is not easy to do.
He's got 10 wins in the UFC.
A lot of people don't even have that. Yeah. I can't get a handle on that guy. There's times when I'll watch him go into a fight and go, no, he's going to lose this. And then, he knocks out Elias Zaleski dos Santos or Ponzinibbio. And then you think, this guy's, he's pretty legit. He's got heavy hands. He's a decent grappler. He's got some stuff going on. And then Jake Matthews out wrestles him or Neil Magny out wrestles him. And you kind of go, what's going on here?
Inconsistent is a good way to put it. Yeah.
But got to win.
It kind of reminds me of Dong Young Kim,
I can see that comparison, yeah, in terms of career trajectories. But, solid win for him. One of the bigger ones. He should be staring down a top 15 opponent again next.
I'm disappointed for Ponzinibbio because that guy was not, when he was on that 7-fight run, like he was not getting the respect he deserved.
He really wasn't.
And then he just got sidelined with.
He had some gnarly injuries. He had a real bad staph infection. He had a bone infection related to it. Like he had some serious problems medically.
And then what kept him out for most of last year? Was it?
I think the same thing. I think it was that combination of like staph and residual infections.
So hopefully he can get back to reasonable training again, and he won't be too badly affected by this. Or I don't know. I mean, all that momentum he had after the Magny win, it's gone now. Like,
he beat the crap out of Magny too. That was not an especially close fight.
Because I think he had some big like he was supposed to fight Usman at one point.
He was supposed to fight Usman at one point. He was supposed to fight Robbie Lawler at one point.
Yeah.
Like that. It's not like there was never an attempt made to get that guy big fights. It just bad luck.
So he can bounce back from this, but it's just going to depend, like how badly this loss will affect him mentally, or will it drive him to will it light a fire under? Because, sometimes losses like this, they won't necessarily break a fighter. They can motivate a fighter. It just depends.
Yeah, one can hope. If you're in Ponzinibbio's corner, metaphorically or literally, you certainly hope that he winds up being motivated by this rather than the reverse. Let's see. Alessio Di Chirico defeated Joaquin Buckley via head kick knockout, 2-12 of the first. Nice head kick from Di Chirico. Unfortunate for Buckley, who had a fair bit of momentum after he went 2-1 in 2020, but, scored the knockout of the year, decade, ever last year. Just got a little bit too predictable with his entries. Then this was really kind of a setup for him. I mean, I'm not trying to dump on Di Chirico here, but if you look at his recent performances, he was 3-5 going into this fight in the UFC. Yeah, and he was on wasn't he on like a
3-5
losing?
Yeah, 0-3 losing streak.
Yeah, he was pretty clearly being set up here, but you got to go out and execute. And Buckley, kind of walked into a head kick. Sucks for him.
I think he overlooked this fight. You can't, even if you're getting, a tomato can, you still got to crush the can. You can't just.
If you don't crush it properly, you'll trip on it. There you go. And kicking off the main card, Punahele Soriano defeated Dushko Todorovic via TKO 448 of the first. Soriano had a real rough first, 2 minutes and change. But he finally started straightening out his punches, and Todorovic couldn't quite adjust his defense, and so he started getting punched in the face repeatedly. He got dropped 3 times. I think it was the third or the fourth time he got knocked down that we got the stoppage. Soriano, still a little raw in some respects, but the man clearly has some punching power, so good on him. And, Todorovic is not I hope he learns from this and rebounds, because he's shown some decent ability, not just in the UFC, but some of his more regional fights I kind of looked up. So, a good little fight to kick off our main card, and in fact, the first finish for the UFC in the year 2021. So, good on Soriano for that. You got anything for that one?
Nope.
All right, as for the prelims, Jocelyn Edwards, I think the first Panamanian fighter to make it to the UFC, certainly the first female Panamanian, defeats Wu Yanan via unanimous decision, 230-27, 129-28. I was 29-28, I think, but not a great fight, but, it existed. Carlos Felipe defeated Justin Tafa via split decision, 29-28. Up until the main event, this was probably your fight of the night. It's lower level heavyweights, but these two had a fun brawl for what it was. I thought Tafa won, but comes down to the third round, and I'm not complaining about 10-9 for either guy in that one. Ramazan Ameev defeated David Zavada via split decision, 29-28 again. Little surprised by the split here, but Ameev, I thought won, so I'm not complaining about the outcome. That was a good little fight too. Vanessa Mello and Sarah Morris turned in one of the worst fights of the year, and I know we're only little over 2 weeks into it, but God, this fight sucked. And kicking everything off, Austin Lingo defeated Jacob Kilburn via unanimous decision, 230-26 and 130-27. I don't have an issue with I didn't give Lingo a 10-8. I forget the round. I think it was the first. Could have, and I don't object to it. Again, decent enough little scrap, but, they kind of padded this out down the card with some guys that were, 1-1, 1-2 in the UFC kind of deal. So you kind of get what you get when you watch those fights. So anyway, Jeff, again, I wasn't especially enthralled by any of the prelims, but anything stand out to you?
Yeah, I got a press alert, because I do get those from the UFC, even though they won't credential me. Khabib's decision. Dana White reveals today on ABC Network at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So, Dana White, Khabib Nurmagomedov announcement on ABC was supposed to happen at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. It did happen, It happened after the first fight at 3:30 p.m. And it was a total non-announcement. All he said was,
my favorite take on this actually came from Chuck Mindenhall on Twitter. He said, "I really hope Khabib's response to coming back is maybe." And then immediately after Dana's thing, he said maybe.
So here I wrote it up. I'm going to watch this fight, referring to UFC 257. I would never tie up the division. Hold the belt and keep the belt away from somebody else. These guys do something spectacular, show me something spectacular, and make me want to come back and fight. So I have the feeling if somebody delivers, it could be on the main event or co-main event. And like I said, he thought Oliveira looked good. If these guys can do something special, Khabib will fight them. What the hell?
What a non-answer, right?
What is that?
That is a Dana White answer. That's all that is.
What?
I'm genuinely waiting for Khabib to come out and say, no, that's not what I said. I said I'm retired.
Email alert. You're clogging up my inbox for that nonsense. Like, come on here. Like, we're people. Like, are that many more people gonna turn in to the start of the ABC broadcast? Like, I don't know if that was a carny attempt at ratings or not. But
I think that was more to give the UFC a bit of a good faith benefit of the doubt. I think they might have just wanted to make sure that potentially anyone watching from the press wasn't going to miss the announcement, and then every fight on the prelims went to decision. I know, but again, look, we all know that. Hang on. You and I both know there's plenty of websites that are going to make a lot of hay out of that non-statement.
Sure.
So I think they were just trying to, and I also think they were trying to pressure Khabib into saying, hey, we got this big show on ABC coming up. If you're going to commit to something, we can announce it there. And I mean, Khabib's not going to fold under that kind of, borderline bullying in the public square. Because that's just not the person he is. It was like a carny pro wrestling. It was like
this was
worse than pro wrestling.
It was like Dixie Carter, like we have a huge announcement kind of thing.
Greatest night in the history of our sport.
Yeah, it was like that. Yeah, it was basically like that. And
the
only thing I will maybe excuse Dana White for here was apparently there was some chaos backstage. They didn't have, there wasn't an opening when the broadcast started, and apparently there was some craziness backstage or some chaos. I don't know what. So
there was also, the other thing about that is when you time these things out, there's certain allowable grace periods for broadcast time that you have to kind of blend with fighters having to be up and ready to fight at a specific time.
Okay, so there were maybe some issues there that they were not. So, but I feel like, they've, with all the Fox cards and everything, you feel like they would be a little more organized by this point, even during the pandemic.
You'd like to think. It was a total non-announcement.
During the pandemic, yeah, dumb.
It was basically Dana coming out and going, "Hey, please buy UFC 257." That's kind of what it wound up being, because he didn't say it's going to be for the belt. He didn't say we're stripping Khabib, that's now for the title. He didn't say the winner is definitely fighting Khabib. He said, you guys should watch along with us, and maybe the collective force of the fandom can exert enough pressure on this guy to come back and fight Conor again, because I really want the potential payday that represents.
Does it surprise me if Khabib would come back and fight? No, because fighters are notorious liars, and retirements, they're meaningless.
Unless they're medically mandated, yeah.
Yeah, they're meaningless in MMA and combat sports. So I mean, come on here.
I'm not going to be surprised if
I'm annoyed because they sent me an email. They sent me a press alert, and this was not worthy of a press alert. I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm not on their mailing list, so they don't send me anything. But I look for this was the promotional. Who was it? I stole this line because I thought it was funny when someone else said it. This was about as much payoff to a setup as a J.J. Abrams television series.
Sure, yeah.
It's just not. It was just a giant nothing, giant bait and switch. Shame on everyone involved for that. Look, if Khabib's retired, take the belt off of him, put it up for grabs between Dustin and Conor. It's not that complicated. If Khabib isn't retired,
no.
Okay, what would you prefer?
Dustin and Conor.
You could piss Conor off by putting it up for grabs between Hooker and Chandler.
Yeah.
Look, if you want to wait until after Conor and Dustin, then fine. The winner of that fights the winner of Hooker and Chandler, or Charles Oliveira fights somebody.
Hooker lost to Poirier.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's an easy situation to navigate in that respect. Again, you got Charles Oliveira out there who
Ferguson, why did you have to lose 2 fights, Tony? Come on. You're killing me here.
He could have recovered from the loss to Gagey, but that Oliveira loss is like backbreaking for his title aspirations.
I don't know. It would annoy me so much if Conor just suddenly walked back into the UFC title after all that.
I mean, look, I don't like Conor in that respect. But he's still highly ranked for whatever value you want to give that. Dustin Poirier
just give up the title and do your memorial fight with GSP. Just.
You see, Dana White said no. There's no interest in Khabib versus GSP, which is utter nonsense.
He didn't. He seemed to be okay with it before.
I don't know. That came out, I think, fairly recently. That just he was kind of trying to shoot that down again.
Is that his way of saying he's not willing to pay what they want for that fight?
Pretty much. How dare these people ask to be fairly compensated for what might be the biggest fight in UFC history?
In other words, he's not interested in paying them what they want for the retirement fight for Khabib.
He's not interested in. I'm going to go out on a limb. He's not interested in paying Khabib and Conor what they would want to fight each other again for a second time.
Well, we'll see.
Look, if that rematch happens, Dana says, that could be a $3 million or a $3 million buy pay-per-view event.
That seems to be the fight he wants more than GSP because of the grudge.
Oh, of course that's what Dana wants because again, the money. Conor Khabib 1 is the most successful pay-per-view in UFC history.
If they can get into another press conference brawl or start another riot,
they don't even need it. They don't even need it this time around. They have all the stuff from the first one they can use.
I'm sure if it happened, he wouldn't hate it.
Probably not. And again, could a rematch between those two do 3 million pay-per-view buys? Yeah, that's not unreasonable. Now, here's the flip side to that. A $3 million pay-per-view buy, Khabib should be making, what do you figure, 30 million for that, give or take, 30 to 50 minimum? And there's no way, under God's green earth, that the UFC is going to pay a fighter, ever, that much money, unless they are legally required to.
Okay.
So I don't know. Again, look, this felt like Dana got a bunch of answers he didn't like, but is still unwilling to come out and shoot down a couple of options and wants to keep interest high for the upcoming pay-per-view event. That's what this felt like to me.
I still didn't like it. I'm still highly annoyed.
I don't blame you for that. All right. Anyway, that was it. UFC's debut for the year of 21. UFC on ABC 1. Max Holloway's performance in the main event, absolutely phenomenal. All kinds of records. I mean, I just have to say this because it needs to be said. Prior to this fight, the record for most significant strikes thrown in a UFC fight was, I think, 520 something between Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington. Max broke that on his own in this fight. I can't even begin to wrap my head around the work ethic that man has when it comes to his training to go in the cage and do that. That is, I couldn't keep that pace for one round. Pick any round of that fight. You try to match that pace for 5 minutes. It will leave you gasping in the fetal position, trying not to vomit. And he did that for 5 rounds. It is absolutely remarkable. All right, Wednesday the 20th, we not only have the peaceful transfer of power here in the United States, we will also have, early in the morning, UFC on ESPN 20? 20. I'm going to talk a little about the main event.
Don't blame me. I voted for Cthulhu.
You made the right choice. I want to talk a little about the main event, but after that, I think we can just do quick hits. This is not an inspiring card. Anyway, main event is a relevant welterweight fight between Michael Chiesa.
Main card has Roxanne Modafferi.
It's better than Jessica I potentially being on the main card for 257. Anyway, Michael Chiesa has looked pretty good since moving up to welterweight. He's won 3 in a row. Submitted Carlos Condit, beat both Diego Sanchez and Rafael dos Anjos via clear-cut unanimous decisions. He's a big, rangy guy, good at finding the back.
Good grappling, good wrestling.
By contrast, we have Neil Magny, who's on a 3-fight winning streak as well. He's 5-1 in his last 6.
Beat Robbie Lawler.
Robbie Lawler in his most recent fight.
Li Jingliang, who looked really impressive last night.
Yeah, the winner of this isn't going to be in the immediate title picture, but they will probably be due a top, a top shelf fight.
Chiesa is ranked in the top 10 right now.
I think he's probably around there.
He's number 8. Magny is number 9. So it's a solid top 10. It's a solid top 10 fight. Yeah.
Magny's another guy I never have a real handle on whenever he takes a step up in competition.
I mean, inconsistent is a good word for him, you know?
There is a level of opposition that Magny will consistently beat, and I'm not sure if Michael Chiesa is at that level or above it. I kind of like Chiesa.
I think they match up very well. I think it's a good matchup.
We're going to see a lot of clinching, I think, a lot of kind of grappling in that respect. And both men can wrestle. I think Chiesa's ability to find the back is going to be a big part of this because Magny will give up his back a lot. I'm going to pick Chiesa, but this is a really, like I said, this is a really competitive matchup on paper. Could go either way. And if either guy just blows the other one out of the water, they should at that point have a pretty good bead on fighting somebody near the top 5.
I'm picking Chiesa by submission.
Yeah, I think the longer this goes, the more it favors Magny. We've seen Magny fight 5 rounds before.
I mean, he's a good fighter, but whenever it seems like he's got something going, he gets submitted by Dos Anjos or Damian Maia, that kind of thing.
I just don't think I can pick him now that he's adopted that weird accent.
What is he talking in a weird accent now?
Yeah.
He's from Brooklyn. Like, what is the accent he's using?
I think right now he fights out of either Haiti or the DR. Well, so he fights out of Colorado still, but I think he's changed his nickname to the Haitian Sensation, and he's got kind of that Caribbean accent going on a little bit. I don't know if he lives.
Is he in the tilt status?
I don't know. I don't know if he's doing it because it amuses him. I don't know if he married someone from that part of the world and their accent is rubbing off on him, which happens all the time.
Is he of Haitian descent?
If he's gonna claim the nickname,
because he's from Brooklyn.
Again, if he's going to claim the nickname, I'm going to assume he is not more than 2 generations removed from from someone in
Says
his lineage being
Haitian and Dominican descent. So maybe
Okay. So his
maybe
parents
he lost it and he picked it back up, but
could be. Again, the way accents change over time is actually a fascinating thing to kind of study and look at. But yeah, his made me kind of chuckle when I heard it. So especially because I remember him from The Ultimate Fighter, when he was as straight-laced as you could get. So anyway, that's your main event. Pretty good fight.
It reminds me of Mackenzie Dern.
Well, Dern at least like splits her time living between both places and has enough people in her immediate social circle that are either Brazilian, so only speak either Portuguese or accented English. Like, again, accent confusion like that is a real phenomenon, and it's, again, a very interesting one if you want to look up how language develops in that respect. So rest of this card, Warley Alves fights Munir Lazzez. I actually kind of like Lazzez. Alves is a little underappreciated, but he's been off for he's been out for over a year, and lost to Randy Brown last time out. I'm going with Lazzez. Isaac Villanueva will fight Vinicius Mejia. Probably go with Villanueva there, but low-level light heavyweights. The aforementioned Roxanne Modafferi and Viviane Araújo. She had the loss to but that's her only loss in the UFC. Roxy's not really she's not an easy out, but I think they are kind of trying to see what they can get out of Araújo here. Let's see, Matt Schnell and Nam. That's a good fight, actually. It's a really good fight. Schnell, a really solid technician, both on the ground and on the mat, coming off a loss to Alexandre Pantoja, but had a good winning streak going before that. And Nam finally got to the UFC not too long ago. In fact, just in 2019, has gone 2-2 since then, but he's won his last 2. He's back down at flyweight for the first time in a while, actually. His previous 2 were at bantamweight, his last one I think both of his last fights have been at bantamweight here in the UFC, yeah. I actually kind of like Schnell if we're all the way down at flyweight. I don't think Nam's physique is kind of built for 125 anymore. Featherweight, Lerone Murphy and Douglas Silva de Andrade. I don't mind picking Douglas Silva de Andrade here, but Murphy's Silva de Andrade is coming up from, okay. Yeah, I'll go with Silva, but again, close one. Omari Akhmedov and Tom Breeze will fight. Probably Breeze there. See, Ricky Simone, and there's no way this was his original opponent. Who was supposed to fight? Oh, maybe it was this, jeez. Anyway, he's fighting, I'm going to butcher this gentleman's name, I apologize, Gaetano Pirello. Depending on where he's from, that last name is could be pronounced a few different ways. We have another flyweight fight, Sue Mudarji versus Zarak Adashev. Mudarji looked, Sue. He's got a weird name. Like, I actually think Sue Mudarji is just his family name, and the other one is even longer. But I'm not sure about that. Anyway, Adashev got knocked out by Tyson Nam last time, whereas Sue looked really good in his return to flyweight when he just beat the crap out of Malcolm Gordon. Probably go with Sue, but again, that one could go either way. Middleweights, Dalcha Lungiambula will fight the Joker, Marcus Perez. Probably Perez there, but Lungiambula is an explosive fighter. Another flyweight, Francisco Figueiredo will fight Jerome Rivera. Probably go with Rivera there, but having another flyweight named Figueiredo who messes people up would be amusing. Lightweight, Mike Davis and Mason Jones. I don't know either of these gentlemen. I'll go with Davis. And kicking everything off, women's fight. Victoria Leonardo. Sorry, just thinking of somebody else. Victoria Leonardo, who is coming off of a Contender Series win, will fight Manon Foiro. I need to know where that woman is from. To try and pronounce that last name correctly. If it's French, I'll stand by my pronunciation. If it's non-French, it is French. Okay, I'll go with Poirot until I hear potentially otherwise. Apparently we will also have Umar Nurmagomedov and Sergey Morozov. Morozov, he's Kazakh. I think has he fought in the UFC? No, not yet. Okay, there's another guy with a similar name. Whereas Umar Nurmagomedov, also making his UFC debut, must be confusing him with a different. There's another Nurmagomedov in that same bantamweight division I'm probably confusing him with. I'll go with Nurmagomedov there, but that could be a sneaky good fight, actually. Bantamweight's a really, really good division. So anyway, that's the rest of that card. Jeff, on the off chance, anything in that stick out to you? Anything you want to talk about?
Nope.
Alrighty. Let us move on then to the big event, the one you're all listening to hear us talk about. UFC 257. The UFC is back on pay-per-view. Main event. Oh, God. Jessica Ai is on the main card. Why are you doing this? Why? Why do you put that woman on the main card of Conor McGregor pay-per-views? It makes no logical sense. Anyway, Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor, main event. These two fought several years ago down at featherweight.
More than several.
How long ago was that?
2014.
So September of 14, so over six.
Over 6. To me, 6 is more than several.
Fair enough. Dustin Poirier's excursion at lightweight has been marred only by a kind of, I wouldn't say fluke, but flashy knockout, more flashy than substance knockout to Michael Johnson, and then the loss to Khabib Nurmagomedov in a title fight.
And it was at featherweight.
Yeah, the fight between Poirier and McGregor back in featherweight. Yeah. Conor, by contrast, has not fought. He fought about a year ago when he ran over Donald Cerrone like he was a truck and Cerrone was a bump in the pavement that needed to be smoothed out. Prior to that, McGregor hadn't fought since October of 18 when he was submitted by Khabib Nurmagomedov. This fight is. I've always kind of liked this fight on paper. It's grown on me more the more I've thought about it.
I don't like it.
Okay, why not? I'm curious.
Should be Tony Ferguson.
The guy who just lost?
Yeah.
If Tony had beaten Charles, I don't think he was in line for this fight.
So what?
Look, Tony should absolutely have made more money than he did, but he is where he is right now, and it sucks, but
the fight with Cerrone wasn't even at lightweight.
No, that was at welterweight. That's true. Conor McGregor's career record at lightweight in the UFC is 1-1. Oh, God. I have to remind myself of that on occasion because it amuses me.
Yeah.
Look, Conor, setting aside gimmickry, and I don't mean to insult anyone. For any big fans of Conor who are screaming at me, for the first 7 minutes of a fight, Conor McGregor might be certainly one of the most difficult fighters to deal with in the sport. He is sharp when that first round and a half ish, especially if the first round goes well. The first round goes well for Conor. The second round can go well. After that, things drop off. But he is a unbelievably difficult challenge for that 7.5 minute stretch of time. He moves very well. He sets up his counter shots. He pressures you. He stabs at you with kicks. He gets you to overcommit on trying to counter him. He clobbers you. He has significant power. He varies his offense. That first round decides pretty much the fight. If Conor can dictate things to you in that first round, he can probably either get you out of there in the second, or build up enough of a lead to not have to worry too much as the fight goes on. But Conor historically fades. Anyone who's been able to extend him has found success later. Even in fights he's won, the third round and on is not his friend. His fourth round against Nate Diaz in their second fight was impressive because that man dug deep. Whatever else you want to say about McGregor as a personality, he gutted through that fourth round to win it and make sure he was able to win the fight. And that certainly
What
deserves
about the third round against Khabib?
Oh, it was a 10-8. He lost it horribly.
Okay. Weren't people
saying...
saying...
Sorry. Hang on. Sorry. Third round against Khabib, Conor won.
Okay.
I confused it with the second there in my head. But even then, that was more... Conor won that round more because Khabib took it off to reapply pressure in the fourth than because of anything spectacular he did.
Right. It wasn't really that impressive of a round for Conor.
It wasn't an impressive round by any measure. It's just one of those 5-minute stretches that exists. Dustin Poirier, by contrast, the man is just built for war. He has waded into the depths of hell multiple times. He went to hell with Eddie Alvarez twice. He went into hell with Justin Gaethje, with Max Holloway, with Dan Hooker.
With Khabib.
Yeah, that was more one-sided, but yeah, he went in there and
he had a couple moments against Khabib.
He had a really nice shifting right hand in the second round that, look, I don't care what people say about Johnson hitting him. The punch Poirier hit him with is the most significant strike Khabib's ever been hit with.
He gave Khabib a better fight than Conor did, for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So the question just kind of becomes, can Poirier avoid that early onslaught from McGregor and either drag this late or potentially catch him in that opening stanza and force a change of conditions for Conor? Both men fight southpaw. One of Poirier's better punches is his shifting right. So he kind of starts out southpaw, throws a bit of a left as he steps through, then either uses the now lead hand to throw another jab, then the looping right to kind of steer you into it, or just the looping right. I mean, he clipped Max Holloway with that and hurt him. He caught Khabib with it. It's a really good punch. Poirier, the more well-rounded fighter of the two. I don't think that's terribly in dispute. I expect Poirier to try and slow the first round down, clinch, wrestle, and then try to drag this out later. As far as predictions, either guy could win this and it wouldn't surprise me. Again, Conor, in the first round, Conor has the capability of beating anyone in that division. Now, likelihood, that'll change depending on the specific matchup. But I would not be surprised to see him beat anybody early. That's just where his skill set shines the most. I do kind of favor Poirier here in this fight. His defense has changed a lot since their first encounter. Poirier at lightweight seems able to absorb a bit more damage. And he's a serious power puncher. He goes upstairs and downstairs both very well. He's been through wars, and that will catch up to him. But again, That's
my main concern for this fight.
And it's a real one. But I lean towards Poirier a little bit. But again, I don't hate this fight given what it is. I'm rooting for Poirier on an emotional level. Not just because I'm not a big fan of Conor, but I want to see the UFC's apple cart turned over in this respect. That would just make me happier than the reverse.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my take on it. Jeff, how about you? What do you got?
I'm picking Poirier, even if it's illogical, even if it makes no sense, even if he lost the first fight in 2014. Do I want the apple cart turned over? Yes.
Let chaos consume you. It's fun.
Yeah. Especially after that phony press alert from yesterday. I thought in 2014, Poirier even had the tools to beat McGregor back then. And I think he more than does now as well. Because I think his stand-up game, his striking game, has gotten even better than it was in 2014. And that was I think that was the big mark against him back at that time.
His defense at that time was the same thing. He'd always respond the same way, whatever you
Yeah.
did to him striking. He had the same response. As soon as Conor figured that out, he just capitalized on it and knocked him out.
He's a battle-tested veteran. He's a better grappler than Conor. He has better submissions than Conor. Conor, I think, tends to fight with his chin a lot and tends to leave his head open a lot. I don't think Conor's defense is that great. And I think
he gets hit a lot, you're right.
I think if Poirier can have that tightened up defense and exploit those openings that Conor tends to leave a lot, I think he can win this fight. And I don't know. The boxing, I don't think Conor is that great of a boxer either, for that matter. You know? I think Jake Paul would probably give him trouble, Robert.
No. No. I understand. Hang on. Jake's the smaller one, so even Logan Paul at least is a large person. Jake not as big as his brother. No.
Okay.
I don't care what.
Maybe I spoke too hastily there, but
look, Jake Paul couldn't give Conor McGregor trouble in a thumb wrestling match, much less a boxing bout.
I think it's arguable to say Conor is the best boxer in the UFC. I don't know if I would. I don't think I agree with that, frankly.
I don't think Conor is the best boxer in the UFC.
Yeah.
I just don't. I mean, especially because most of Conor's game is set up by his kicking.
I think Stipe is probably a better boxer, honestly.
In terms of pure boxing, I think that's probably accurate. You could certainly make that case if nothing else.
I mean, at least Stipe has that Golden Gloves background, and Conor does not. You know, and Conor has fought a grand total of one boxing fight, which he lost. So, I mean, how good is his boxing really? You know,
it's kind of an open question, especially because most people who only watch MMA don't understand the difference between boxing and punching.
Like, I think Conor was getting snippy about Holloway saying he's like the best boxer last night, and I'm like, well, I mean, where do you get off dictating? Like Conor is not in the position to dictate the authority or the hierarchy of the best boxing in the UFC. I'm sorry, he's not. He just isn't.
That I would agree with.
Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna pick Poirier. Yeah, Poirier. I'm rooting for you. Make it happen. Let the past die. Kill it if you have to. It's the only way you'll become who you were supposed to be.
This will only be better if Poirier brings out a bottle of his hot sauce after he wins and then breaks it over Conor's head. Just for full wrestling.
Then I hope he gets on the mic and he's like, Jake Paul, you and your dog suck. Go to hell.
Poirier's class as a human being is so high above the antics of the Paul brothers. He would never address them.
Still, that kind of ticks me off.
Poirier could beat the both of them if they fought 2-on-1.
Okay.
Well, sorry, I shouldn't go that far. Fighting 2-on-1, even if there's a significant size and or skill differential, the difficulty in overcoming from 1 to 2 is not just doubled. It goes up by, it's like the Richter scale. It goes up by orders of magnitude. So anyway, that's your main event. Co-main event, Dan Hooker and Michael
Just
Chandler.
Get on the mic and say, Jake Paul, I could give 2 craps about your pet's Instagram followers. I don't know, something clever.
I just wouldn't even address them.
Probably. Still makes me angry. I don't know why.
You don't want to be angry at them, just ignore them. They,
But they make me angry. They make me angry, Robert. Ah.
Yes, because you have no control over yourself.
Well, thanks.
Look, it's a realization I had to come to about myself. I let a lot of things anger me that shouldn't. I let myself be offended a lot more than I should have, and years ago. If you're just an amoeba responding to external stimuli, then okay, but you're not an amoeba. You're a human being. If you choose to get angry, fine. That's your choice, but it is your choice. It is not theirs. All right, anyway, co-main event: Dan Hooker, Michael Chandler. Hooker coming off of, boy, that man got put through the ringer in 2020, didn't he? Fought Paul Felder in a war, and then Dustin Poirier in a war.
Now he's fighting Michael Chandler, who's finally making his UFC debut.
Yeah, Chandler coming off of, he knocked out Benson Henderson back in August of 2020.
I don't know.
Let me put it this way. If this were 5 rounds, I would pick Hooker without too much consideration. Only 3, Chandler has a much better chance of winning. I still kind of favor Hooker, but Chandler's got power in his hands. He's got good wrestling. He knows how to fight along the fence. He's one to take lightly.
He's also fighting in the UFC now. He's not in Bellator anymore.
That is also true. So again, I favor Hooker, but only over 3 rounds. I will not be surprised if Michael Chandler wins. Just going to put it like that.
Slight edge to Michael Chandler here. Just how is he going to adjust to the UFC, fighting in the octagon, first UFC fight? Here's the other thing. I feel like the time to get a guy like Chandler was kind of like 5-6 years ago and not right now.
I think that's fair.
Because to me now it's kind of like bringing in Ben Askren when they got him.
Well, Chandler's not that old. Hang on.
Chandler's 34.
He's 34. Was Askren, 38 when they brought him in?
Oh, it wouldn't. No. He's not even 38 now. No way.
So he would have been. Are you sure?
Askren is 36.
Okay. So he was 30. He was probably around 36 when they brought him in. He didn't fight all that long in the UFC. So 35, 36.
His UFC debut was in March 2019 for the Lawler fight. So that was just under 2 years ago.
So he probably would have been, fairly close.
35.
I mean, 35 probably if I had to guess. Again, it'll depend on specifically what month he was born, which is somewhat irrelevant to the distinction at that point.
He was 30. At that point, he was 34. So there you go.
Okay. The only thing in Chandler's favor relative to the Askren situation is Askren had also kind of been like semi-retired for a while, whereas Chandler has been active, if nothing else. And again, you can make jokes about the level of opposition in Bellator.
He's been in a lot of tough battles too, though.
His fights with Eddie Alvarez, those were both tough. His fights with the Pitbull, with Patricio, when he got knocked out in that fight. The Will Brooks fights were not easy.
And Will Brooks did not. He kind of washed out of the UFC pretty quickly.
That's true. So yeah, I'm anxious to see Chandler.
They got Will Brooks coming off of the Eddie Alvarez, series. Mm-hmm. And Brooks did not. He couldn't cut the mustard. So I'm not saying that's like that's never an exact science, because it never is with MMA math, but we'll see how he does in his UFC debut. Some guys have trouble adjusting. Some guys need a couple fights to kind of really find their footing in the UFC. Some guys are impressive right off the bat. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I'm giving a slight edge towards Chandler. Now, is Chandler the greatest boxer ever? No, but I think Chandler does have fairly decent boxing for MMA.
Yeah, that's fair. I worry about Chandler's leg. He's had problems with leg kicks before, and Hooker throws a mean leg kick.
He's a good kickboxer. good striker.
But yeah, we got a couple of lightweights at the top of the card. I'm just going to do the rest of this card, and we're going to do quick hits because this is not a deep card.
Yep.
Next up, we have Jessica I and Joanne Calderwood. Joanne Calderwood, please, don't do this to me. Don't make me suffer through more Jessica I fights. I beg of you.
Jessica
lightweight.
This fight.
She could. Look, again, my jokes about Jessica I aside, I will continue to make them, but the woman has wins in the UFC. And you know what? That's not nothing.
And I like JoJo, but she's very inconsistent as well.
Yeah, she lost a title shot because she decided to fight Jennifer Maia and then got submitted. Again, I'm pulling for Calderwood, but you never know. Women's flyweight is in such a constant state of flux outside of the champion that who knows. Matt Frivola against Otman Izatar. This is a step up for Izatar. Frivola's not. He's a tough out. He's on a 2-fight winning streak, I think. I mean, Izatar 2-0 in the UFC, both knockouts, both in the first round. I kind of favor Izatar, but if Frivola can either avoid his power early or just kind of gut through it, what Izatar's made of down the stretch is still something of a question mark. Marina Rodriguez will fight Amanda Ribas. Ribas seems to be kind of, surging. She beat Paige Van Zandt last week. Rodriguez suffered her first career loss when she fought Carla Esparza. So we actually do have two kind of promising fighters for the division. I kind of favor Ribas at this point in time, though. Anyway, that's your main card. Why Jessica I is on the main card of a Conor McGregor pay-per-view is beyond me, but I don't put them together. As for the prelims, Nasrat Haqparast and Arman Tsarukyan, I feel like these two fought before. No? They have not. Okay, I am misremembering. That's a darn good fight, actually. Tsarukyan is a really good fighter. Haqparast is a good fighter. That should be on the pay-per-view card. Like, just make it a lightweight affair. This should have been on the pay-per-view. I like Tsarukyan as far as...
I was shocked Brad Tavares is still in the UFC.
Yeah, Brad Tavares against Shoeface Antonio Carlos Jr. I mean, Tavares is only on a 2-fight losing streak. But he's probably closer to the bubble than not these days. Shoeface also lost 2 in a row. I kind of thought there was an argument for him in the Hall fight. I like Shoeface here. See, Juliana Pena will fight Sarah McMahon. Logically, this should be Pena, but that woman has had so many false starts to her. I mean, she was doing pretty well in the Jermaine Durandamy fight before she got choked out in the 3rd round. Guillotined by Durandamy. Oof. She's had a lot of false starts and stops to her career, whereas McMahon never quite panned out. I mean, I know she had the title fight at one point, but she's been kind of at the 500 mark since. So should be Pena logically, but again, kind of who knows at this point with those two. Light heavyweight Khalil Roundtree Jr. and Marcin Prachnio. Prachnio on a 3-fight losing streak, not good. He's 0-3 in the UFC. Why is he still there? He's been finished in all of them in the 1st round. Okay, he's there to give at this point, he's there to give Khalil Roundtree a rebound win after Iwan Kutalaba elbowed him into the ground. Roundtree's been out for over a year. He should win this fight, though. Then our early prelims, Andrew Sanchez will fight Mahmoud Muradov. I kind of like Muradov there. I mean, Sanchez had a decent win in his last fight, but I'm still not sold on the guy. We have a catchweight fight at 150 between Movsar Evloev and Nick Lentz. I like Evloev there. I think they were supposed to fight earlier, but yeah. And kicking everything off at flyweight, Amir Albazi and Zhalgas Zhumagulov. I kind of like Zhumagulov there, but again, flyweights both still kind of finding their way in the UFC. Could be a good fight. So, all right, Jeff, anything from the rest of that card that draws your interest?
That about does it for me.
All right, again, not a great card. Man, for a while, again, when all they had was Poirier McGregor, like, you looked at the rest of that card and went, there's nothing here. There's just nothing. Hooker and Chandler did them a solid by making that happen. Anyway, Saturday, coverage in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania. Wednesday coverage as well, so please stop by for both of those. Say hello, I appreciate it. All right, the only bit of news that I have here. Okay, we have the top 2 title fights for UFC 260. The UFC revealed early during the fight week. Rematch for the heavyweight title between Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou. I assume that's the main event. And for the featherweight title, Alexander Volkanovski and Brian Ortega. This puts Ortega in a bit of an untenable position if he loses. To lose to both Max and Volkanovski would kind of be the end of his title aspirations for a bit. I shouldn't say forever, but it'll be a while to rebuild from that. Stipe and Ngannou too. It's kind of the only fight that makes sense. I still favor Stipe
Ortega's
pretty heavily.
lucky to be in that situation, but
look, if Zabit had
dictates it, I guess.
There's a bit of that, and look, there's the fact that, Zabit won't fight anyone over 5 rounds. Or, won't sign to fight certain people on short notice. To be abundantly clear, he's not obliged to do either of those things unless he signs to fight for a 5-round fight, but Zabit could have put himself in a better position to make his case than he is right now.
Did they offer for this fight to Zabit, or what?
This fight, no. It's just, a couple of times when the Yair Rodriguez fight fell out, they offered him other fights, and none of them were accepted. Now, again, how much of that is him as a person? How much of that is his manager? Who knows? I don't care. I'm speaking purely about the situation.
He didn't fight last year at all.
No, he did not.
Okay. It's kind of an iffy situation, but yeah. At least he won a fight fairly recently.
Yeah, I mean, if Ortega had lost to the Korean Zombie, this would have been the Zombie shot, right?
Right. So,
and Stipe and Ngannou too. I still think Stipe kind of just does what he did in their first fight and wins, but
as do I.
By the same token, man, Ngannou knocked out a bunch of people in a row, and you got to reward that in some capacity.
You do, but
if he loses again,
the way he fought that first fight was ridiculous.
Yeah, I expect him to perform better this time. Again, if he wins, I will not be shocked. Again, for the record.
I'm picking Stipe.
I'm still picking Stipe. But if he loses again in kind of the same way, that's a big problem for his career, because he's proven that he can beat the majority of that division. But if you can't beat the champion, especially if you lose to him twice in the same fashion, that puts you in the old Rich Franklin spot, right? That's not a good.
Right, and also it looks like they're going to do Jimmy Crute versus Johnny Walker for this card.
It's a good fight.
It's a fun light heavyweight fight.
Which you can't say about most light heavyweight fights.
And another light heavyweight fight, Modestas Bukauskas and Michal Olad.
Okay, I will save. Hang on. I'll save you. It's Modestas Bukauskas and Mikhail Oleksiejczuk.
Thank you, Robert. I apologize, Mikhail Oleksiejczuk.
Dude, this is not a joke. I can't speak any other language but English, but at this point I've seen enough MMA and heard enough, pronunciations and whatnot. I'm halfway decent at picking out how things should be said phonetically, even if I do sound like a toddler sounding things out.
Yeah, you should teach a course on this at the PI. Like MMA journalists.
Here's how. No, it would be for fighters. Here's how not to butcher your opponent's name when
there you go. There you go.
Uh, anyway, yeah. So UFC 260 taking shape. That's not those top two fights. Those are solid fights.
They stay
So,
together as long, if they can stay together. I
of course,
mean,
enormous caveat there. That's true. But
'cause, we
the UFC,
still have
the
all
U,
this craziness running during the pandemic. But yeah.
the UFC's pay-per-view schedule for the first quarter of 2021. Again, you got 257, 258, 259, and 260. 258 is probably the weakest of those four, but that's a solid.
Well, here's my problem.
Solid line.
Here's my problem. Since I didn't talk about this before on the show, the 259 lineup, I don't like 3 title fights on one card. It's just I think it's just too much. I like all those fights, but like you're just tempting fate too much. Because
they all go the distance.
It just, when you have 3 title fights all going the distance, it just kills the pacing. Kills it. And especially since we are in this never-ending pandemic, I think you want to spread those fights out a little bit more. But not my call.
Again, I agree with you there. Again, 3 title fights is pushing it. If they all go the distance, you're looking at an extra. Because you block out. How much do you block? You block out about 45 minutes of airtime for a title fight between walkouts, introductions, fights, time between rounds, and then the announcements.
Mm-hmm.
You block out somewhere around 40, 45 minutes. If all 3 of those go the distance, you're tacking on almost, 2 hours of extra,
Okay, so
time doing
the best
stuff.
fight there to me is Petr Yan versus Aljamain Sterling.
Love that fight.
That's the fight. I'm happy that fight's happening, and they're not doing like there's
hold together.
Yeah, because that's the number 1 and 2 guy in the division. Sterling more than earned that shot. He deserves that shot. That's the fight that should happen. Blachowicz versus Adesanya, I'm iffy on that. I think Whitaker is partially to blame on that.
The way Whitaker responded after some of what Dana White said, I'm not sure how much of that's on Whitaker.
Some of it is on Whitaker.
Some of it,
he was very not. I'll tell you why. He was very non-committal after the win over
Cannonier.
Jared Cannonier. He didn't say he didn't want to fight Adesanya, but I think he basically said that he's in no hurry for that fight.
I think it might have been have been a timing thing more so than a desire. Like I'm willing to fight Adesanya, but around X date, and they wanted it sooner.
To me, that's just in the UFC's eyes, that's basically like saying you don't really want that fight. Basically,
the UFC thinks you don't want the fight if you don't want to do it at 3 a.m. for peanuts because it will amuse Dana and company after a drunken bender.
Yeah, well, I'm saying Robert Whitaker should have been more outspoken about wanting that rematch if he really wanted that rematch.
Okay, I think that's a fair point. I mean, I also blame the light heavyweight division for sucking. And I just mean it like this. Who's Adesanya jumping over unfairly here? Because the answer's nobody.
Glover Teixeira.
I don't even think he's unfairly jumping over Glover.
Wow.
Look, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't object to Glover versus Yan at all. But you're given one of your bigger... here's the thing about that. The UFC wants the fight that will draw the most money, right?
Yeah.
The fighters want the fight that will draw the most money for them. And if you're Jan Blachowicz and the UFC presents you with 2 options, you can fight Glover Teixeira or you can fight Israel Adesanya.
Right.
Which of these represents the biggest payday? The answer is clearly Adesanya.
I guess. I just I don't, to me it's not the worst matchup to make. I don't
You're
know.
always a little bit leery when they do stuff like this because you don't want pure chaos across 2 to 3 divisions.
I mean, for Adesanya, it's basically win-win for him because even
Yeah.
in a loss, he's still the middleweight champion and he's still like the best guy in that division, and I still sort of pick him over most of the top contenders in that division.
Pretty handily in some cases.
But I feel like the fight he wanted was John Jones, and I guess John Jones is still looking to fight at heavyweight, so I don't know.
Dude, you seen some of John's picks lately?
No.
He is jacked. He has put on a lot of weight. And I don't mean fat. I mean he's put on muscle. If he is making a move to heavyweight, he's serious about it. He's putting in the reps in the gym for that.
So here's what Whitaker said about the Adesanya fight. It's not something that I need to chase because I know it's going to happen. That's why after I lost to Izzy, I wasn't rooting for a rematch because I knew that if I beat the guys they put in front of me, I'll get there eventually. I want to run that fight back with Izzy, but I'm in no rush. I'm not going anywhere. I know he's doing some things.
Okay. So Whitaker may be trying to be the company guy and said, as far as you want to give Adesanya a chance to do something, record making, etc., then I'll keep winning
this
fights.
Was after the Cannonier. This was after the Cannonier thing. So
yeah.
So I don't know. I just feel like to me that was too non-committal.
If he'd made a big deal about it, then I can see some of the public sentiment. By the same token, he also got knocked out clean inside of 2 rounds when he did fight Izzy. And I think, much as I think a rematch would look different, that's a tough thing to overcome from a PR standpoint.
I'm just saying Whitaker doesn't play the game that well.
He doesn't play the game the way most people play the game, I think is fair. And you're correct. He didn't do the best job advocating for himself.
Great fighter, though. I mean, not
tremendous.
Questioning his skills.
Dude, he's been to hell more than once.
Yeah.
Great family man by all accounts. Whitaker is. I love the guy. As far as fighters go, he's great. But I think that's kind of fair that he didn't come out and maybe advocate for his position to the maximum potential.
As for Jan Blachowicz, I hope this decision doesn't come back to haunt him, but we'll see.
Dude's gonna cash a fat check.
At his age, you gotta take those big paydays when they come.
And again, this might be unduly harsh, kind of towards Glover.
I was still so impressed with his fight with Reyes, and everyone was overhyping Reyes after the Jones fight.
Blachowicz, for a guy that just kind of had to keep plugging away at it.
Yeah.
Not I'm not a 1-to-1 comparison, but you think of some of the other fighters that just. They were in the game for a long time. They had their ups and downs, and they just kept swinging the old axe at the tree.
Robbie
Lawler, Bisping. There's another one who's just perseverant to the end.
Yeah,
Blachowicz
I respect
is from
that a lot.
Oh, it's so hard. It's so hard to maintain motivation and drive and focus in the wake of repeated setbacks. And Blachowicz has had some serious setbacks, but dude kept swinging, and all credit in the world to him.
So the third fight for this card is Amanda Nunes versus Megan Anderson for the commemorative Cyborg title. That's somehow still in existence.
At this point, it's the Nunes Memorial title.
No, it's the Cyborg Memorial.
No, they may have created that division for Cyborg, but they're keeping it around for Nunes.
Well, the reason it's the Cyborg title because they created it for her. So
okay, fair enough. Um,
It's the
if
Stu
one of
Hart,
those,
it's the Stu Hart, whatever, invitation.
if one of those title fights falls out, I won't be upset. Like 3 of them is a lot, and I think there might be a little bit of like safety booking in that respect here.
Yeah,
But I'm
possibly.
with you on that as far as 3 title fights is you're pushing your luck there with audience fatigue.
Yeah.
You really are. All right, let's check Twitter, see if anything else crazy came up. Nothing MMA related, it looks like. All right, so then, Jeff, it has been a while. Always glad to have you back. And to the audience that we have, what would you like to plug?
So I did an early review of WandaVision. I saw the first 3 episodes, so so that means one more episode than what's available now on Disney Plus. So if you want to read my review of that, go to the Movie Zone right now on 411mania.com and check that out. And also, another thing I did an interview with Oyen Oladijo, who is Lieutenant Joanna Awoshikun on Star Trek Discovery. So that's another thing I have up there right now. So hopefully this year will. I don't know what's going to happen this year. But hopefully we can manage through this to some degree. I don't know. Another review I have, another recent review I did, Transformers War for Cybertron and Pixar's Soul, because they're a few weeks old at this point, but those are still up there, so please check those out.
All right, as for myself, I got together with Mark Radulich and Jesse Starcher for a TV party to review The Boys Season 2 over on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. We had a lot of fun. We had some laughs. We talked for a while. That's a long podcast, but hopefully a worthwhile one, so you can find me there. You can find me Fridays, annoying wrestling fans, when I cover WWE SmackDown. I did not expect to annoy as many people as I did with a bad throwaway joke this last time around, but...
Which was what?
You know Sami Zayn's new character, right?
Yeah.
So I called him Sammy QAnon Zayn.
Oh.
Get it? Look, he's... I mean, if nothing else, the conspiracy against Sami Zayn actually has evidence supporting it rather than the absolute nonsensical BS that's spouted by that particular group of lunatics.
Wouldn't it be more like
I'm just gonna have a different stupid reference every week, for him as a conspiracy theorist. So, and I plan to pay it off with a Simpsons reference in a few weeks. So tune in for that.
Very good, very good, very good, Robert. Thank you.
So yeah, again, I rubbed a few people the wrong way. Mea culpa. My sense of humor doesn't hit with everyone, and my intention is never to offend. Unless it is. It's never to offend when I'm writing something official for 411.
I wasn't offended. It's just like I can.
You can easily see the track people took to be offended. So yeah, point being,
I don't think it's that bad, but
I appreciate that. Thank you. So anyway, tune in for bad conspiracy references talking about Sami Zayn on Fridays. So anyway, you can find me there doing that. Wednesdays, I review MLW Fusion. You can find both of those in the Wrestling Zone of 411 Mania. We'll be back here next week for a double review, the UFC and ESPN 20 card and UFC 257. And wish to double check this. I think that's it because the next card is not the 30th, it is the 6th of February. So yes. We'll be back just for the review of that. And of course, whatever news has come out, then the week after, we'll be back to preview Overeem and Volkov. How's that card looking? They're on ESPN Plus for that? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's not great, but there's some hidden gems on that card. Oh, that's got Corey Sandhagen and Frankie Edgar. Oh, and Dariush and Carlos Diego Ferreira. Okay. There's at least 3 really good fights on that card then. So we'll have a full preview of that in a couple of weeks. Until next time, everybody, I'm Robert Winfrey on behalf of Jeffrey Harris, reminding everyone to please stay safe out there and continue to be well, be safe, and behave.